Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It is a busy week around here. We got a lot of baseball being played, got hockey going on, NBA getting ready to kick off as well. And this weekend, I'm getting on a jet plane taking off to where I met this guy. They have since torn down the Metrodome, and I guess Brian Billick probably has no problem with that at this point, but we'll be seeing the new glass menagerie that the Birds have taken too much popularity to in Minnesota. We're going there for the Super Bowl, and I know Coach Billick will be there with us in about 12, 14 weeks, whatever it is down the line. And, Coach, I tell you what, man, this is a week-to-week business, isn't it? For you, for John Harbaugh, for Mike Zimmer, for everybody. The conversation we had last week of the sunshine and the roses and beating the Raiders, it certainly doesn't feel that way around Owings Mills this week as we head to Minnesota, does it?
Well, I think when you look around the league, I made the comment, everybody's coming back to the middle. You know, you always have some outliers, and certainly when you look at and positive teams like Kansas City, Atlanta, Denver. These are all teams that lost at home, and Kansas City being the lead one that had not had a loss yet. Then you have teams like Miami, Chicago, and the Giants, all of which winning on the road. So I don't know that there's the outlier now. Cleveland and San Francisco still suck. I mean, that is what it is. But everybody else is just kind of pushing towards the middle. So it's kind of exciting because it should give the Raven fans hope from the standpoint that this is wide open. And it's going to be like this from week to week. Some people will get hot, and then all of a sudden it'll change, and they're going to lose some games. You scratch your head and say, how does that happen? I mean, when you look at Pittsburgh, so for example, how do you lose to at home to Jacksonville and then go out and play the way you did and beat Kansas City in Kansas City? So this is kind of the world we live in right now.
Marvin, in his early days with me, and I would always sit in his office down the hall from you on Fridays. We would watch film. And at one point he said something to me. It's 20 years ago, and it's always stuck with me. And he said, I don't know how people bet on this. I mean, I really don't. Like, I don't have any idea what's going to happen week to week with my own team or anything. And you can't even begin to guess. But more than that, in the modern era, so much is matchup, right? So much is injury, and then so much is you pop a special teams. Flacco hits a guy between the 1 and the 2, and the ball pops up in the air, and it goes back the other direction. That you can't account for any of that. You can't account for luck or bad things that are going to happen. And I guess we do start from the premise that they all have the same amount of money. They all have the same amount of collateral when it comes to drafting and the free agency, that it really is sort of meant to be a level playing field, and luck is an injury or sometimes the great equalizer in all of this, right?
Absolutely. And fate, not to dismiss it, to just, it's just going to matter who's lucky, so why work hard? I mean, you have to begin with being a good team, and you got to work hard and do all those things. But at the end of the day, fate's going to take a hand. And that's just the way it is. And so that's not to make an excuse, and that's not to paint it rosier than it is. Because the Ravens, this is going to be tough sledding going up to Minnesota now. That's a tough place to play. That defense is for real. As you look down, we always start, when we start the season, you look at a team and you say, okay, what's the schedule? And what does everybody do? And we, even as coaches, we did it. You
WL.
Don't admit to it. Well, okay, who are we going to be? Well, we'll beat this team. We'll beat that team. This will be a tough one. But when you look at the schedule, I mean, Minnesota, Miami. How do you figure out Miami and the win that they had the other day? Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, Houston. I mean, it's a week-to-week deal.
He is our head coach, Brian Billick, on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. We had a huge soiree for Maritime Magic. They're doing their D.C. thing this weekend, and the Whalers are playing. So you go check that out at livingclassrooms.org. And, of course, our head coach here at WNST week by week and breaking this stuff down. And, you mentioned the Vikings, and we'll see Case Keenum this week. And I'm talking so much to so many of the Minnesota people this week about this incredible resiliency that you would always talk about, next man up and all that stuff, even if sometimes it's not real. But from Bridgewater to Bradford, now to Case Keenum, they're now in the driver's seat in that division. Some would say Matt Stafford, but I saw them give up 52 points this weekend to the Saints. But they're certainly in the conversation now to be a playoff team with a backup quarterback, with a third string, and here comes Bridgewater back. No one's been more resilient than the Vikings with the Dalvin Cook injury, and we sit here and feel bad about the Ravens, but look at what happened to the Vikings, and they're managing through it somehow with Mike Zimmer.
Oh, absolutely. As much as you talk about the Ravens and the injuries they've had, Minnesota's been right there when you look at it. And yet you're right. The next guy now it begins with the defense, and we know that how spectacular that secondary next to Seattle's maybe the most physical secondary that I've seen. And then you turn around and the fact that they got balance, really with the obviously with this kid Diggs and Thielen. That's the thing that's the difference with this team. Whether it's Bradford, whether it's Case Keenum, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, it is that they have some legitimate receivers. They have a legitimate threat down the field. The offensive line is healthy and big and physical. And in Minnesota, and that building can still get loud, so that's an advantage, obviously, for their defensive ends if you can't hear the snap count and coming off the edge. So this is a balanced team. Case Keenum is playing like you'd expect out of Case Keenum. 1 week good, 1 week bad. Over 16 games. I don't know how Case Keenum will hold up. But the other night, obviously, very, very efficient in the way that they played. This is a very real team. And in the NFC North, with Aaron Rodgers out, and we'll see how that goes, obviously, in terms of holding this thing together. With Brett Huntley had a tough first night, but there's some things that he can do. Detroit has shown its vulnerabilities, and obviously even Chicago, who a lot of people, I wasn't sure Chicago could win a game, and you got to give them credit for playing very, very well. Finally got the young man Trubisky playing. That was the biggest thing that surprised me the other day was, and it's got to be the biggest concern, and when did we ever think we'd talk about this as being maybe the number one issue for the Ravens, but the way teams are running on the Ravens. And I realize the injuries on the inside, but that one to give up 231 yards rushing against a team that that's all they can do, it's got to be concerning.
He is Brian Billick. We are talking Ravens football here. And certainly, look, I've known you 20 years. You've been at this 35, 40 years in this league. I don't know if you've ever been asked this question before, maybe during some tough times or maybe during strike times or whatever. You a little worried about the league? I was in the stadium, and I think as a stock, right, from the minute you touched a football in the National Football League being drafted with the 49ers, that stock has done nothing ever, really, but go up and up and up and up and up and up and up. All the values, all the money, all the revenue, all the everything has done nothing but tick up for 40 years in this league. And this is a test for them with Trump and politics and knees and black and white and fans and sponsors and television and the fact that it's expensive to go to games. We've got a lot of empty seats. We've got disgruntled people. And then on top of that, Aaron Rodgers is gone. J.J. Watt's gone. And I know you want Case Keenum to step up, and I know you want Deshaun Watson to be the next thing, and maybe he is. Winston got hurt this week. This is a tough, manageable situation or management situation, I think, for Goodell, but for everyone, including you, who made your money and became famous off of this league. No one in this league really knows how to deal with this sort of weird adversity because this is weird. All the way around from the L.A. situation, they've made some mistakes here lately, right? I mean, TTE, there's just a lot of stuff going on right now, and a lot of it's not good, and I don't know that the play on the field's great right now either, right?
Yeah, when we talk about a couple things, that's a lot.
I know, but that's why I think it's going the other way.
I will say this, and I've always been one to. You're right. You look at the league, and it's like they're like Apple. It's just like nothing phases them. And they just keep making money, and the interest just keeps going up, and there's nothing that can really change that. And I've always kind of felt that way. But I will tell you this, as someone who obviously I do 20 radio shows a week. Okay, I'm obviously in the airport every week, traveling, and in that, and I do a lot of my corporate speaking, as we know and talk about. So for the last 2 months, I'm going to say almost on a daily basis, at least 5 days a week during the week, I'm exposed to people via the radio or the corporate speaking, where afterwards I answer questions, or they come up to me in the airport daily.
You might as well literally have an NFL shield on your head, right? Like literally, when they see you, they think football and they come up and talk football with you, right? Literally.
And they ask about the whole meal and this, that, and the other. People are pissed off, and I'm shocked by the level of how upset, not shocked, but just how consistent the opinion is, and how many people, whether it's true or not, or whether they stick to it or not, are saying, I'm done with the NFL. Now that's shocking to me. And yes, and I think the NFL is aware of that. This is big. And all the things you talked about, the fact that everybody's moving back towards the middle, so to speak, as we say, is good from a competitive standpoint because everybody's in it. But we don't have even New England, and maybe by the end of the year, obviously teams will emerge. But there's those that feels like it's great to have dominant teams because everybody has that team they love to hate. And there are no dominant teams. So it does feel like the league, although some people say competitive, and you're talking about balance and equity in the league, some people would call it mediocre because of that. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I what you just outlined for the first time, and normally I'd go, no, I think you're overplayed. I think that's very, very real.
And it's weird for everybody, right? I mean, no one, I don't want to say you don't deal with adversity or, crisis management. I mean, hell, there's always a crisis in Goodell's office, right? But not like this kind of crisis, right? Like whether you want to fight with the president that 8 of these guys, these billionaires funded, quite frankly, and now he's urinating upon them in their league. I mean, this damage has been done by the guy that they supported to be president. That's got to be real tough for them this week up in New York trying to navigate this, right? When, let's be honest, Jed York has a different opinion on this. Shad Khan donated to Trump and now is on the other side of this. There's a political battle going on in that room that involves a lot of men with a lot of money that isn't all that different than a white player and a black player, an East player and a West player or whatever that would disagree on the knee in a locker room, or coaches that would disagree, right?
Yeah, I mean, the regrettable part is with all that, is going on with the national and international and the political scene and the fatigue that has set in with all of us that seems to be our daily lives. You look at the NFL and think, God, can I have 3 hours? Can I just have 3 hours to watch my team on Sundays and kind of hold that all at arm's length? And it's permeated that. And I think there's a real sense of loss of like, God, how do I get away from all this angst?
He is our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. He is Brian Billick. He's Coach Billick out on Twitter as well. And you can find him on the NFL Network and breaking down games and appearing and doing all that. So let's go backward to the Ravens here because this is where our bread's buttered around here. Just some global thoughts about how this thing could get better at this point. It's certainly not going to get better with Macklin not in there, not going to get better without Brandon Williams in there. They need to get healthier. I don't know if they're ever really going to get healthy. But offensively, right now, where Flacco is, there's got to be some frustration because he didn't play all that poorly. He threw some decent passes. He wasn't the reason they lost, but the wide receiver situation's just gotten to be quite bad, and now Perryman looks like he's not going to be around.
Yeah, How do we look positively at that? Well, let's look at going into the season. The number one topic beyond Flacco, of course, is okay, can we run the ball? That was the big Achilles heel last year. And there's at least a more concerted effort to run the ball. And that they have done that. Flacco does seem healthy, but you're right. There's just an absence of anybody to go to with any kind of, they did not have one explosive pass play this week. And you can't win in the NFL without that. I mean, even the Bears with Mitchell Trubisky had a couple big plays. And certainly not league leading or anything like that. And let alone the fact, now you run for 231 yards, you're going to, and get a couple turnovers from your opponent, you're going to win a lot of games. But so from offensively, it's the same concerns going in. Where do we come up with those big plays? Third down continues to be an issue. So that, job one is how do we, in my book is, okay, how do we generate big plays? And it's gotta be, if it's not going to happen organically, then you gotta, just like you gotta stick with the running game, right? You gotta do this. You gotta find a way in your play calling to at least try to generate big plays. You have to look, when you're 3 of 18 on third down, that's tough. And so those are the top two things that have got to happen, offensively. Defensively, and again, whether it's schematically or whatever, it's beyond, it's not It's not just a one-off. When you have Jacksonville, when you have Pittsburgh, when you have Chicago running on you the way the Ravens did, they've got to address that. There's some
tackling
things,
hasn't been good, though, too. I mean, this fundamental tackling's been bad. I mean, if they would have made every play on first hit, they would be a much better defense. There's no doubt about that. Every team would be, but specifically for them.
And Dean Pease is as good a coordinator as there is in the league. It may, and you don't like to think in these terms because it's tough, but you may have to do some things structurally that really aren't you, that really, you could leave you vulnerable. But but clearly you can't just say, well, we're just going to tackle better. We're just going to play better. We're just going to do what we do and do it better. Well, maybe, but there's enough of a database here to look at that you may have, and I'm sure that's what they're doing, is looking and saying, do we need to stack the box more? Do we need to have more run pressures? Do we need to take more chances? Now, it's going to leave the back end vulnerable. But is there, what do we have to do? Because what's the number one thing any coach will tell you when they get hired or they start? We got to run the ball, and whether that's true or not sometimes. But they will tell you we got to play good run defense. Because when you get run on, and people start to have their way with you physically, there's a sense of hopelessness that can fall into the players of, oh my God, what do we do now?
Last thing for you, you mentioned Flacco appears healthy, right? When you were wearing your purple shirt back in August with Jerry and running around calling preseason games, it was all about his health, his health, his health. He threw the ball 65 yards on the fly, literally, on Sunday. Now, nobody caught it. But that being said, when I saw that, I'm with you. He looks to be healthy, which was our 1 August wish, right, for the whole season. So we have that going for us, at least so far, right?
Yeah, and we said initially he looked a little stiffer in the way he carried himself, which I think was valid. That was a matter of him getting back into game-playing shape early on. A little like we saw Le'Veon Bell. What we're seeing out of Le'Veon Bell now is a whole lot different than we saw the first 2-3 games of the season. And that's to be expected when you don't have an entire training camp. But what did we say coming into the season offensively was going to be the key? If they stayed healthy in the offensive line, and if they stayed healthy at wide receiver, then they would have a chance to be a fairly balanced, maybe some potential for an explosive offense. Well, they haven't been healthy in the offensive line, and they're now not healthy at wide receiver. And this is going to be a tough one for them because, like we said, third down and big plays. That's the challenge right now that this offense has to come up with.
I know you're not the coach, but I'll make some coaches' excuses for you. I mean, no West, right? No Dixon. Those were the guys we were going to start with, right? That's just the running back. No Pitta, no Crockett Gilmore. We've forgotten about him, right? Max Williams. I mean, the amount of injuries just to the skill position guys that we talked about in March and April and May and June, it's like those guys don't exist anymore, and I have a feeling Perryman's just going to go away now. We're not going to hear much about him for a little while. Not to mention Yanda and everything else that's going on. It really has been a sticky situation, and I think it tests the mettle of everybody, right? For trying to find that next Ryan Jensen that can come in and play a little bit. We're all looking for that, whether it's Matt Judon, whether it's Zadarius Smith. I mean, Bronson Kafusi, somebody to start getting after the quarterback and say, by the time we get to Green Bay 4 weeks from now, we're noticing them more, right? Because that's really what you want them to pop on film a couple of plays and make a couple of plays that stand out. We're just not seeing that yet from some of these young players, right?
Yeah, and that's where the growth has to come in. It reminds me a little bit of my last year. If you'll remember, we lost our starting quarterback, our backup quarterback, 3/5 of our offensive line, including Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis. That leaves a mark. That hurts. And so now you have to try to find a way to adjust. And there's only so many people that are going to come to the rescue. It's not like there's a lot of top caliber players out there. Oh, well, just go get this guy to replace this one or that one. So yeah, it's on campus, as they say, as to where that help's going to have to come from. And some of these younger players and their productivity are going to have to step up. And I think they will. I think, we could very well be sitting here next week and talking about what a great game on the road that the Ravens had at Minnesota and feeling a whole lot better about ourselves.
Yeah, it's always a week to week. Coach, always great to speak with you. As always, we'll send everybody out to Coach Billick and, of course, the livingclassrooms.org. Coach, have a good week. We'll see how it goes. I know how much you loved your time in Minnesota. I hope I love my flight out of there a little more on Sunday night.
Sounds great.
See you later. There he goes, Coach Billick on Twitter, as well as for the Living Classrooms Foundation at livingclassrooms.org. Give to them. They do great stuff around here in the city, as does our coach, Brian Billick. You can find me out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. It's a huge week around here. I'm going into the Dundalk High Hall of Fame. Never been a Hall of Famer before. I'm going to find out how that feels on Friday. We are eating crabs, crab cakes, beer, pit beef, whatever you want at Costas after the event. It is our Dundalk High homecoming. So for my Dundalk Al alum friends, we'd love to see you out on Friday at the game or at Costas. Any of our friends, anyone that wants to come out and have some crabs, crab cakes. My wife and I, my son, my daughter-in-law will be entertaining folks out there. My first trip to Costas without my mom. So this will be a little bit of an emotional experience for me on Friday as well. And I do appreciate all the kindness on all the stuff that's been going on in my real life the last couple of months. But I'm out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Big week around here. Ravens headed to Minnesota, as are we. Luke's on the backfields in Owings Mills, and we're monitoring all things American and National League Championship Series. I'm Nestor. We're WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.